Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, the host of Forbes True Crime. Joining me now is Emily Turner, director of Aileen, Queen of the Serial Killers. Emily, thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Your documentary tells the story of Aileen Wournos, who is arguably the country's most notorious female serial killer. And it's been over 30 years since she was caught, over 20 years since she was ultimately put to death. So to start off the conversation, what made you dive into her story, and why did you think now was the time to retell it?
So this project all comes about from access that my colleagues were able to gain to an interview that Eileen did on death row, and that was with an artist and filmmaker called Jasmine Hurst, and they were friends, so they were corresponding when Eileen was on death row. And up until that point, uh, Eileen's kind of consistent line had been that she'd killed all of those seven men in self-defense. And so when she granted Jasmine, who was a friend, this interview, it was really representing a kind of deviation from that story. And for all of these years, Jasmine hasn't, I think a minute or two has been shared elsewhere, but the 2 hour interview hasn't been given to anybody because Jasmine really wanted it to land in the right hands, I suppose. And we were incredibly fortunate that those hands were ours.
And so I guess my next question would be, how did she trust you with that footage? Because like you said, I mean, this was a never before seen conversation. Aileen Wournos was on death row. And when you see this conversation, I mean, it's definitely a new side to Aileen that I think the entire public has never seen or never even thought about before.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, you know, in documentary filmmaking, it's often about trust and about the relationships we're able to cultivate with people to entrust us with their story. And that's a kind of privilege and responsibility that lays pretty heavily on your shoulders as a filmmaker. And so my colleagues, Polly Greetham and Kirsty Cunningham at BBC Studios, built this relationship with Jasmine. I believe they saw like a blog post where she was saying that she had this interview, and this kind of film is a result of like 4 years of that relationship and building that trust. And yeah, but as you say, it is a very different side to Eileen. You sort of, we begin the film with it with her kind of walking in, and it's yeah, she's very soft, and she's talking to a friend, and that is very, very arresting, I think. And immediately, that was my first entry into directing this, and I thought, wow, this is really something, as you say, a side we haven't seen before. But then within that interview, so many conflicting and contradictory Eileens are kind of in the chair. She goes from kind of quite angry to very soft and compassionate, and she's really charming. And I think that is something that doesn't sit very easily when you're thinking about making a film about a serial killer. I think it's so much easier in life for us to kind of have these boxes that we put people in, and I think so many people with this story kind of discount her as being a cold-blooded, premeditated killer. And this interview kind of flies in the face of that characterization.
And I think